Greetings everyone, and I refer to everyone because last video I had made the, I hope, forgivable error of referring exclusively to my YouTube audience, when in fact my presence expands greatly across the internet. You see, YouTube is a dying website, choked by political correctness, and its alternatives, such as PewTube and BitTube, are more open-minded to my kind of musings on life, politics, and biology in general. Not saying that I am that crazy, just that my views would make multiple people in the upper middle class and positions of power a bit uncomfortable under the collar. Anyways, one issue I've been seeing with certain hereditarians is that they've been trying to reduce the complex phenomena of aggression and criminal behavior in certain groups of people, such as blacks and males, to simple, elegant, but ultimately wrong conclusions. What I'm referring to is the boogeyman of testosterone. Higher levels of testosterone cause greater levels of violence or aggressive behavior, that kind of stuff. Ultimately, there are multiple problems with this thesis. For one thing, we see in the case of eunuchs that before and after their castration, their levels of aggression remain relatively the same. Now, you should know that with castration, they won't be able to produce the levels of testosterone that they normally would have. But if we assume that testosterone is such a cause for aggression, then these eunuchs should be quite peaceful and almost placid. But that doesn't seem to be the case now, does it? Another thing is that it seems as though it is the acting of aggression and the enactment of dominance behaviors that causes the secretion of testosterone. So that introduces the problem of where the ladder of causality begins. Does testosterone cause dominant behavior and aggressive behavior, or do those behaviors cause secretions in testosterone? That's a confounding factor, but not exactly one that's super relevant to the conversation of group differences. So with blacks and whites, it is often purported that blacks are they have higher testosterone. And that's simply not the case for problems that were done in the studies often cited by certain hereditarians. You see, the issue with testosterone spikes and measurements is that, like all systems of the body, testosterone is produced at different times of the day, and that almost unanimously, the highest spike of testosterone is measured at around 8 a.m. Now, the issue is that in most of these studies that purport to show a difference between blacks and whites, blacks were recorded around 8 a.m., whereas whites were recorded around various ranges in the 24-hour system. Don't you see where the problem is? If you record blacks at 8 a.m. and say a white man at 5 p.m., you'll get the seemingly clear result that blacks have higher levels of testosterone. But what you actually recorded was the phenomena of testosterone spikes and webs and flows. And indeed, when you control for this measure of time, blacks and whites have negligible differences in their testosterone. Now, you don't need me to tell you that blacks have higher rates of criminality and are overall a bit more aggressive. But it seems as though that testosterone isn't the cause for their aggression. Now, I can't explain why this certain group tries to reduce this complex phenomena to a simple explanation that testosterone is bad, but I can tell you that it's not exactly the right path forward. Simply because, for one thing, if someone with above average knowledge in testosterone and hormones sees that this certain group of people is making this error, they're more likely to just dismiss them offhand as complete idiots or dilettantes. And that's not something you want for a developing movement that needs more mainstream support. Another thing is that testosterone is already being demonized by third wave feminism and groups of people who want to demonize masculinity in general. And you do not want to give them further ammunition to say that, oh, yes, testosterone is this poison, and because men produce it more than women, that explains why men are just born flawed. And you would think that hereditarians would be more open minded to the bisexual red pill, the estrus phases and alpha fucks, beta bucks, but that's a different topic for another day. You just want to make sure that there's a unity between what the alt right is trying to do when it comes to race and a better understanding of what makes men men. And you don't want to demonize something that helps, at least, in differentiating us from women. That's about all I have to say on the topic. Feel free to offer your critiques. And don't worry, I'd be more than willing to argue this topic until the cows come home. Goodbye.